legislative body that we can continue to do good things for the people of Clarkston. There will still be a mayor.
Yeah, but you're not elected by the people.
Yes, sir, if you're elected by the people.
No, he won't be. Because what if
We're all elected by the
what if
people.
you guys said, okay, let's say they elect 5 people to set up here as council people, and nobody knows who's going to be mayor. Then all of a sudden, you guys make a selection of the mayor, and the people don't like the selection. What you going to do? You going to withdraw that and put somebody else in? And for a year, that doesn't make sense. Go ahead.
I want to say several things. First of all, I don't want us to personalize this either way, in either direction, or from either direction. And it's something about, with all 3 of these items are things which I think we ought to tread very carefully on. I personally don't believe that I could support doing away with the mayor elected by the people. I think the people are going to howl at that. I don't believe they want to abdicate their power to elect their elected officials to a council, especially when I don't think the council currently has much confidence from the public. Hopefully we can change that, but I don't believe that this is going to be a popular measure with the public. I believe that any of these going forward, or all of them, if you folks decide to go with this, presenting this to Carla Brenner for her consideration and put it on the docket, needs to be in the form of a public referendum where the public would vote on whether or not to accept this. But I could not see myself, let me say, reducing the size of an elected body from 7 to 5. I really am having trouble understanding the utility of that. I too concur with Adrian that 6 heads are better than 4. I think it really it's a more cumbersome process, or a more cumbersome meeting, because you've got a lot more people voicing their opinions, and there's a bit more time involved. But I think people, once again, if we put this out at all, the people should decide on whether or not they want to reduce the size of the elected body. As far as the authorization to sign contracts, I'm interested in understanding the utility of that. I think, I don't see any objection to it. Perhaps the mayor or somebody else has another view of that. But it doesn't seem to be, on the surface it seems to me to be a more practical way to handle business. But once again, especially on the first 2 items, I think it's very important to consider the public's role in anything that changes their ability to elect their officials, or to change the size of their elected body. And once again, I think as far as right now, up to this point, especially on this first item of appointing a mayor, a council appointing a mayor for a term out of its own membership, that's not something that I can see a way to support. See the floor. Thank you.
As far as number 1 is concerned, I have a tendency to agree with Warren. I don't believe that we should take the ability for the people of the city of Clarkston to elect the mayor as well as their city council members, and I'm not sure a 1-year term for a newly elected mayor would be a sufficient amount of time for them to even get their feet wet. So I would be opposed to that. I'm not opposed to reducing the number of council members or allowing the city manager to sign contracts of that thing, but I am opposed to the mayor.
You want comments?
No, I'd make it
I was saying I'd like to get someone in here from, if we could get some, maybe citizens from the city of Decatur and other cities who have this form of government, so they can explain how they feel about the process and how it works for their city. I know we are not their city, but we are smaller, and we are going in somewhat the same redevelopment direction, and they seem to have been quite capable and do quite well
with the way they have their election process and their choices and their function of their government.
But I would say this, I think everything we've done as far as we're going out and looking and comparing things, I think we've always said we like to compare to a city that's compatible with us, not Decatur. Decatur's not compatible with us. What Stone Mountain is, Pine Lake is, that's the cities we need to go look at, not Decatur. I would think that we could go look at Decatur, because we've always said, if we've always directed staff when they were doing comparisons, with the last thing, I think with the alcohol situation, you said go compare it to cities our size. So on this situation, let's go to compare cities our size. I mean, why not be consistent?
Well, I'm sure we can find other cities our size with
Yeah.
the same comparable type situation that we're proposing here. So if we could have some dialogue with folks from those types of cities so we can understand the pitfalls, the barriers, and the pluses and the opportunities that it would present.
Okay. You know,
Well, the discussion of a mayor in either of these scenarios being elected, clearly the person would have to have been an elected official. They would have been duly elected. I can imagine jurisdictions in which the vice mayor or the mayor pro tem is a separate elected office. I don't know that I've heard any people advocating that we now change the way that the vice mayor is elected. And now that we've moved over to a council, city manager form of government, I guess the question is, what is the role of mayor in that form of government? The administrative responsibilities in a mayor-council form of government, I think that's fairly clearly delegated to the mayor's position. In a council, city manager form of government, it's largely symbolic. They are a representative. The question is whether or not that representative necessarily has to serve for a 4-year term and be elected separately for a distinct office, separate from council election. I think that's a question that we need to ask ourselves, whether or not it's a significant distinction to us.
all right, let me
Or is it just symbolic?
Let me give you a scenario right now. I've been working on a situation as far as the ORR is concerned about impact fees that the way the city has been impacted since we started having our refugee resettlement classified as a city here right now. I'm working with direct people, certain people that flew in here from Washington, met with me down at the Federal Center. They're going back. Now I'm going back to Washington to meet with them again. Now, what if we just all of a sudden in that length of time cut the mayor's position off and we appoint another mayor? Now, what good would that do our city? I mean, it would drop the ball totally, and I think the people out there would start thinking like they used to think about Clarkston. Oh, Clarkston ain't gonna do nothing, so don't even worry about them. You know, but we're in a form of government now where we got a professional city manager, and I go out and I solicit things to happen for the city, and I shoot it to him, and he takes it all and go with it. Now, you can't do that, electing a new mayor every year. That's impossible.
I can do that as a council person. I can go and do those very same types of things.
Yeah, but I don't think you have the time that I have.
Well, that's a separate issue. That has nothing to do with whether or not.
Well,
you're mayor or
basically,
council.
this job is time. You know, I was up at 8 o'clock this morning in the meeting downtown.
I was up at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, but what you were doing your business, you weren't doing city business. I was doing city business. For the last 3 hours, for those 3 hours, I was doing total city business.
So, okay, well, that's a separate issue.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that's a separate issue because maybe the person, they wouldn't put their hat in the ring if they didn't want to or couldn't put the time to it. I mean, we would want someone who could represent us in all facets. The other thing is, I don't think Bill Floyd has been mayor for how long? I mean, he doesn't just do 1-year stints. The man has been there forever because they have a vote of confidence and they elect him. And the commissioners feel that he represents them well in the arena. And that we aren't saying anything about a person, every year we get a new guy. I mean, hopefully people would elect us that we had common sense and could choose a person that we wanted to represent us. And it isn't anything personal, and if you don't have the time, you wouldn't be running anyway.
The perception is it's personal.
Well,
I'll
that's
come back
your
with that.
perception,
Well,
Emmanuel.
that was your perception about me in the ethics board. It's the same exact thing.
We are talking about a form of government, not a person.
Well, it happened at an inappropriate time, I'll put it like that, when things were going on. Yeah, go ahead, Warren.
I believe this is accurate, but I do not believe that even if we were to vote, or the public were to vote to affect these changes, that would not even come up on the docket until next year. It wouldn't be voted on by the legislature until next year, and it would not come into effect until
14,
2000.
14 or 15? 14.
It would be at the end of the next term.
Yeah, because of the way the elections were.
It'd be at the end of the next.
So what is it? Mayor?
It wouldn't affect nobody's terms up here.
It never would. I mean, it would be phased in.
Yeah, right, it would go in, except for every election, there's 3 people going up for it, and there'd only be 2.
Right.
And it would just totally phase in. All right, any other comments on this subject?
I'm very interested in trying to establish whether this proposal is something that we would want any component of it to be recommended on to staff to deliberate. I've just received something here, excuse me.
Yeah, what I'm passing out is sort of an outline of the process, and I'm waiting for the discussion to sort of get to an appropriate point, and I think I could inform this discussion just a little.
Great.
I wanted to have something to say. Should I wait till after you discuss it?
Yeah, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Let's go through this for a second. We'll be right with you.
All right, and so you've got 3 issues here. They would actually be 2 separate legislative actions. The last issue of transferring authorization to sign contracts on behalf of the city from the mayor to the city manager would take a different path than the other 2. That particular change could happen via the home rule process. And if you see in my little outline, here's a path of how that would work if pursued. You would need to read and adopt that ordinance change at 2 consecutive meetings. That would be September and October. You would then have a final vote for adoption at the 3rd regular meeting, which would occur in November. And so that's not a change in the charter that would have to go through the legislative process. It's administrative in nature. There are no voting rights or Department of Justice issues associated with that change. And so that could go a different track. That could go the home rule track. The other 2 issues, either together or singly, would have to go through a different legislative process, a local charter amendment process. And in terms of a timing, I certainly agree that something of this magnitude certainly would benefit from some public input. How much public input certainly is at the discretion of the council. I'd have to research whether or not this would be an appropriate and legal issue to have a referendum vote, but certainly at least you want to have an opportunity for the public to provide their opinion. And so my recommendation, if you want to consider this, is to have a public discussion at the September meeting. After you obtain public input, staff could then draft a resolution for consideration at the October work session. And the resolution merely would say, the council supports the following changes to the charter and would recommend the legislature consider those changes. Now, as we know, you all have done this before, and I've certainly done this. You would need to, once the resolution were passed, you would need to hand it off to a member of the DeKalb delegation. Typically, that's Carla Gunner. Typically, legislators don't like to consider local charter amendments unless there is unanimous or near unanimous vote on the resolutions. So that's just a sort of rule of thumb that I think all of us have observed. But assuming that that you achieved unanimous or near unanimous consent on passing that resolution, it would be handed